I've been aware of all the work which has been going on in France around networks for a long time. So it's really nice to be invited by you to talk about this particular project, which is something which we've been working on for some time. Now, what I would like to do is first talk a little bit about where this project is coming from, and then describe it in a little bit more detail as to what's been going on with it. If anybody wants to get in touch with me, of course, you can Google any of those terms like EuRRECa or the European Registries for Rare Endocrine Conditions, or you can email me on that email over there. Right, so my own background in registries and within the field of endocrinology has really come from the area of sex development, okay. This slide is just giving you an idea of how these projects evolve, how they develop, and how long it actually takes to do these things. So trying to develop registries in a couple of weeks is not possible, okay. So this is the timeline of this project, which started a long time ago when in Chicago, a number of different multidisciplinary people got together and developed a consensus around managing DSD. And not only that, but one of the small print in that was that we should be thinking much more about collaboration across borders and collecting data sets in some shape or form. So from that came the DSD registry, which was developed through a small amount of funding through the European Society of Pediatric Endocrinology. And then from that came the EuRRECa registry, which was part of an EU FP7 project led by Olaf Hjort and Lubeck, and that was between 2008 and 2011. While we were working on this registry and people were entering data into the registry, we quickly realized that there were people beyond the consortium, which was in Europe, who were also interested in putting data into this registry. So we'd already hit some kind of a niche over here, a gap in the market. So we changed the name from EuRRECa registry to iDSD registry, International DSD registry. And we had funding from between 2011 and 2017 from the MRC in the UK. And by 2016, 2017, we didn't have any anchor funding, but we had funding from a number of different sources because a number of different stakeholders were seeing the value of a registry, and this is a detailed disease registry. And we also realized quickly that we could also, on the same platform, move from DSD to CAH as well and develop an ICH registry, so International CAH registry. So a lot of people scratch their heads to figure out, what does a disease registry do? What kinds of functions can it actually serve? And it's actually taken us 10 years to figure out what a disease registry can actually do, what kind of things it can do. So of course, the obvious one is research. So it can, of course, support research, and there are a number of projects which are coming through for that. Then it's also an international network. It's an international network of people, of clinicians, of scientists, as well as patients and families. We've also developed a patient space in that registry, so people can actually see their own data sets which are in there. And the next step for that is for us to develop a patient-reported or a parent-reported outcome module within that. And then it also allows us to survey practice. So a lot of this work has been done through the DSD-NET collaboration, which was an EU cost action. And then we're talking about, of course, the generic platform, which I've said. And finally, one of the other functions this registry now has is of pharmacovigilance, and also allowing pharmaceutical companies to actually give us some idea, or give them some idea of what can be done, what's the natural history, how often do people collect data, how often do they measure 17-OHPs, or whatever else they do in their clinical practice. It allows industry to actually think about designing proper clinical trials. So we're taking a number of different directions with this work, and you can see the kind of functions. And of course, this is now being sustained under its own steam. And looking at the map of these registries, so this is the uniform platform which has been developed for iDSD and ICH, which is being used. And you can see the dots around the world where people are putting data into this registry. Of course, the primary sort of people who are putting these, or the centers which are putting data in are, of course, coalesced around Europe. But you can see the spread which is going across this. So this is not just a pediatric registry, it's across the age, so it goes over. You see the median age for this is 16 years, and it's approved by ethics to show routinely collected clinical data following informed consent. Okay, so that's the kind of pillar to this particular platform. Now, while we were doing this work, we also wanted to find out what are the hurdles for people putting data into a registry. And I was hearing some of the discussion which was going on earlier on about this. So when we look at a number of expert centers in the field of DSD specifically, and we ask them, are you using a registry? How does your center record activity? Then about half of them said, yes, we take part in a multi-center registry. Okay, a third of them have a local registry. And then some of them don't have a registry at all. The concern, of course, with the local registry is that, of course, you have a registry, but then it's like comparing apples to oranges, and it can be quite difficult to compare data. But certainly, there is, within the field of DSD, the majority are used to collecting data, either as a multi-center registry or as a local registry. So that work is already going. And if you ask them what stops you from putting data in or collecting data, then a quarter of them said no consent from patients. Okay, I think that's an overestimate. I think this is a lot depends on how you ask the patients, what your own conviction is of asking the patients and the parents. In my center and some other centers, which have very high recruitment levels to the registry, really maybe it's less. It's probably about 0.5% of people who say no to actually to having their data put into the registry. So then there are some centers which have said no institutional approval, which may be a center issue. Then a high number say lack of personnel and no time available. So those things do keep coming back up. Okay. So, and the registry itself is quite a detailed disease registry. So, but there is a part of it which is a core data set. And again, the no time available may be not really thinking about just the fact that if you put core data in, it's very quick to do, but putting more detailed data takes a longer time to do. And then there are issues about, it's possible that some people may have some concerns about the quality of the registry. Some people may have concerns, well, they may not just be aware of the registry or how it's used. So there's been quite a lot of work going on in registries, and coming from a clinical scientific background, the area of registries was interesting to me, and I thought, well, this is going to be a lot of investment here, and there's nothing going to come out of this. But actually, there is a science in registries, and over the last few years, I've actually got to know quite a different group of people who are not endocrinologists, and it's been interesting liaising with them and talking to them, and I've learned a lot, and I'm hoping that they're learning a little bit of clinical endocrinology and clinical medicine from me. So as you know, in Europe, there are so many rare disease registries, and there is an issue with the number of disease registries, and that relates to the quality of registries. So given the fact there's so many registries, it's highly likely that the quality of all the registries is not very good. And what we've been doing is been trying to improve the quality of the IDSD-ICH registry over the last few years, and we've worked with a number of different people. We've done quality assessments of the registries. And when you talk about quality, you have to think about a number of different aspects. So you're looking at the research quality, you're looking at the internal and external validity, which is described as evidence quality. Then there is a level of activity. It's another way of measuring quality. How active is the registry? How many people are using the registry? Then you're looking at the information quality in the sense that are there lots of studies going on? Are they completed studies, types of studies, are they varied studies? Then there's this thing about international acceptability. Is it just in one center, one country? Are there lots of different countries involved? Is there a scope of data sharing between centers and countries and so on? And then finally, networking function. So it needs to be more than a registry. The greater value it will have is that if there are people talking about it, patients getting involved in it, and possibly getting to the level of advocacy and so on. So there are lots of different things you can actually put into this quality equation. And I think a lot of these components are dependent on the awareness of a registry. So if you're not aware of a registry, then it's highly likely that you're not going to be getting involved in this. So this brings me on to ENDO-ERN, and that was mentioned earlier on as well. Now, you know about European reference networks, and there is, of course, ENDO-ERN, which is the largest ERN. Includes, when I made the slide, it was 36 groups of conditions, but there may be a few others which are sneaked in. There are 71 reference centers, as you know. and they look after conditions which are in those 8 thematic groups. Now, it wasn't clear to us, maybe about 2 years ago, as to what were the range of cross-border registries which members of ENDO-ERN were already involved in. What were they actually dealing with right now? We, of course, knew of a couple of them, but we didn't know about many of them. So when ENDO-ERN was created, we thought, well, actually, this would give us a very good opportunity to get some kind of a survey done to get a feel for what's happening across Europe. And this was also at the time, now we're talking about 18 months ago, roughly speaking, possibly a bit longer than that, when the ERNs had just developed, and there was also something coming out from EU Shafia saying, well, actually, maybe there's going to be some funding to develop registries which would support the ERNs. Okay, so for us, all the sort of the stars and the planets were coming into the right sort of orbit. So we did this work, which was a database search for international registries using ORPHANET and RD Connect. Now, you'll know ORPHANET and RD Connect are 2 registries of registries. Okay, so they have a database, and they've been getting some idea of what registries there are. But the only way they know the registries exist is when you actually tell them that your registry exists. Okay, so if you're looking after a registry, you have to let them know about it. And for this, we defined an international registry as one which was used by more than 1 country with a coordinating center based in Europe somewhere. Okay. So we looked at all the reference centers, and we asked them, ENDO-ERN, this is 2 years ago now, as to what was happening, what was their awareness, and how did they participate in this. So just sharing some data with you. There's quite a lot of data here, and actually this is all published now, so you'll be able to see this in print. But we looked at all of these, and there are some different colors here, and let me just take you through these slowly. So the blues over here are the local registries, the grays are national registries, and the yellows are international registries. And the panels over here are divided into adrenal, growth, calcium phosphate, pituitary, glucose, insulin, sex development, rare endocrine tumors, and thyroid. Okay, and the different bars over here are the individual conditions which are sitting within those MTGs, those main thematic groups, okay? So try not paying too much attention to that at the moment, but just look at the levels of awareness, and which there is amongst these centers for these conditions. So for adrenal, you will see that there is a high level of awareness of local registries, okay? Not that much awareness of national registries, and high level of awareness for international registries. Within that, there are some conditions which maybe there is low awareness of registries. Now, if you go to growth, for instance, you will see that the level of awareness of international registries which exist amongst the people who are the reference centers in ENDO-ERN was very low. Similarly, for calcium phosphate, it was very low for international registries. And again, there are lots of local registries for calcium phosphate disorders, but no national registries or international registries, or not many, okay? So it's interesting how this is patterning up. So you can clearly see already that if people wanted to develop disease registries, that there are real gaps over here, certainly amongst the ERN members, and I would say this reflects more widely amongst the endocrine community. And similarly, you can see the thyroid is a very similar pattern to that. Now, awareness is one thing. The other part of this is participation. So you may be aware of a registry, but also do you participate in it? And so this is the second part of this particular work, which was looking at, do people participate in it? So for instance, adrenal, now you will see that participating levels or participation levels are much lower than the awareness levels, okay? And the participation levels for local registries are possibly higher now than the international ones. And the participation for thyroid is almost zero for international registries, okay? So there are differences over here which are becoming quite clear. We also asked people, what about, what are your views on future priorities? Where do you think disease registries need to be created? And this is just a Likert scale, and 5 is the maximum. You will see that for most things, people were keen to develop new registries, and they were very keen on developing registries. This is now despite the fact that for some of those conditions, international registries already exist, okay, those particular conditions. So this may be related to the awareness of the person who's responding to this particular question, but it may be the fact that they're not so, it may be the fact that they're keen for those registries to be sustained, or lastly, it may be the fact that they're not satisfied with the existing international registries and they want to develop something new. Okay, so there's lots of different reasons could be for this particular answer. Lastly, what we looked at was the kind of awareness levels. So what we did was we had 3 groups over here. So you've got the ENDO-ERN members, okay, as far as what registries exist. Remember, we also looked at the ORPHANET and RD Connect databases to see what registries exist within that for endocrine conditions which are covered in ERN. And you'll notice there's an overlap over here, but there are a number of registries, so registries over here which are in the ORPHANET database and the RD Connect databases, okay, which ENDO-ERN members weren't aware of. Okay, and these are endocrine registries, and actually right in the middle. So registries which are in ENDO-ERN awareness levels, in ORPHANET database and RD Connect databases. There were only 3 of those which were sitting within that, because I told you earlier on that the onus is on registry coordinators to actually tell the RD Connect and ORPHANET that these registries exist. So I think from that point of view, there is a bit of work to do for these databases as well as to how do they find out what registries exist out there. Okay, and there's a bit of work for these people to do to tell them that these databases exist. I should also add that there are some industry-linked databases, and you will know of quite a few of them, such as KIGS and KIMS and so on. And none of them actually none of the industry-linked databases or registries were in the ORPHANET and RD Connect databases. Okay. So this gets cut off for some reason. This is a kind of a Mac to PC thing. But there are, the summary of this work was very much that there are several international registries which exist for a range of conditions, the gaps in the coverage of conditions that need addressing, the bigger gaps in the levels of awareness and the use of existing registries, I think is very important. And finally, registry libraries such as ORPHANET and RD Connect do not have a record of several international registries led from Europe, okay, in the field of endocrinology. So this work has just been published, so you can always look it up in more detail. It's in the European Journal of Endocrinology. So when we were doing this survey some time ago, we were also thinking about the EU Shafia call, which was coming out in the near future, and it was supposed to come out sometime in 2017. So in December 2016, we assembled a group of people from ENDO-ERN to think about how to plan this as far as registries workshop goes. So we've got these people together, and this was the time when actually the ENDO-ERN itself was approved. So it was quite a nice moment. And the case for EuRRECa, which is the European Registries for Rare Endocrine Conditions, was actually made on this particular sort of premise, really. So it was very much the fact that we needed to develop new registries for rare endocrine conditions, but we felt there was a more immediate need to improve the awareness and participation in existing registries. And we felt very much that a core registry which directs users to high-quality, detailed disease registries is what was really needed, because getting people to put data into a detailed disease registry is a lot of work. There are detailed disease registries which already exist. Okay, developing new detailed disease registries is quite difficult. It takes a lot of work. So if we can signpost people to these registries, it would actually help. Okay, so this was the premise of the whole project. So this is the concept slide of EuRRECa, and this is how it's developing at the moment. And it's divided into a few different sections as a project goes. Okay, and this project was launched in February this year, so it's still relatively early. It's a 3-year project at the moment. So it's divided into sections. So one section over here is about notification. So this is EURRECa stands for e-reporting of rare endocrine conditions. Okay. So what we have is a system over here where all participating centers, and these are not just ERN centers, this is a project which is also supported by SB and EASY, and the idea very much is that people who are beyond the ERN can also take part in this, but at the moment it is very much being focused on ERN, which is our test bed. And the idea very much is that what they will do is that we will send them an email every month, and they will just notify us to say that they have seen this particular case, and that's it, okay? And there's a list which is available, and I'll show you in a moment on the EuRRECa website, where you can sort of take part in it, and you just need to complete that. You just need to tick a box, that's it, okay? It's nothing more than that. So if you have a case of whatever, growth hormone excess or something, and it's got an ORFA code on it, then all you do is just tick a box, and you get an email back to say that you've notified it, and then what will happen is that you will get a unique code for that, a unique ID for that particular case, and you just keep it locally. That's it. There's no more to it. So that's the ERREC notification system, and we're piloting at the moment, and I'll share some data with you in a moment. And the next part of that is what we're developing at the moment, is that we're developing this core registry. So this bit over here doesn't require any consent. We don't take any data. We don't take any information at all. We just want to know whether you've encountered a case, and that's it. Over here, then what we'll do is the patient needs to be entered into the core endocrine registry, and that's a consent process over here. And we've just had ethics approval for that, just last week, actually, in the UK. And then the idea very much is that the core registry will collect about 20 fields. These are 20 fields. We've already been through the process of deciding what these 20 fields are. These are very much matched with what's been recommended by RD Connect, as well as the EU JRC, Joint Research Unit. And what we basically got are these 20 fields. And again, they're on the website, on the EuRRECa website. You can look at them. If you don't think they're very nice or whatever, then please let us know, because they're up for consultation just now. And the idea very much is that a minimum data set from this would be provided to stakeholders. And this might be Shafir, because they're funding the project and they're very keen to understand what her activity is. And then another part of this core registry will have patient-centered outcome measures over here. And we're working on that. There's a work package, and I'll show you in a moment the structure of the consortium. And the idea is that we're not going to take much. It's going to be a very, very small amount, but something which the clinicians within the consortium, as well as the wider people, have agreed are validated, good patient-centered outcome measures. And the long-term vision is that what ENDO-ERN will do, and other participating centers, is that they will use these as a clinical dashboard, or these outcome measures in a clinical dashboard. Okay. And finally, the final function of this project looks quite ambitious, is that it will actually have a function over here which is about find me a detailed disease registry. So depending on what we've put down over here as far as the diagnosis goes, then you'll be given options of where the detailed disease registries exist. Now, these detailed disease registries may be anywhere in the world, okay? But you will have an option of choosing whichever registry one wants to, and that's what we're looking at. But we would like to guide people as to what registry we think are of high quality, okay? And what registries are not such high quality. And that's it's been quite within the consortium as well, it has raised some sensitivities. So what we want to do is use an objective tool, which we're developing at the moment, to get some kind of an idea of what the quality of that registry is. Now, the idea very much is that we want to improve the quality of endocrine registries, okay? So we want to make the endocrine registries the best registries in the world, okay? So that will, of course, take some time, but there has to be a process. So again, any registry which we are getting involved in will be put through that process. So I should add, so these are all the work packages over here. So of course, there's like any other EU-funded project, it needs to have lots of work packages. So there's a management, dissemination, access. There's a quality assurance package over here, core outcomes package, patients and ethics, certain work package 5, and there's a core registry. And then we have a number of expert working groups, which are closely matched to the main thematic groups, which are in ENDO-ERN. So a condition for this particular project was that all the beneficiaries had to be members of ENDO-ERN. Okay, they had to be reference centers within ENDO-ERN. Okay, so the project is very much aligned to that. So the way it works very much is that, of course, it's being managed from Glasgow. The core endocrine registry e-surveillance work is being developed in Glasgow as well, but there is a lot of other people who are involved in it. So the work package over here, which is on quality assurance and evaluation, is led by Luca Pisani from Milan. who's working jointly with Domenica Teruscio, who is a registry expert you will know, who works in Rome. And then work package 4 is from Leiden, led by Olaf Deckers, with co-clinical outcomes, and he's working with Alberto Pereira, who leads ENDO-ERN. And work package 5 over here is patient-parent ethics, led by Martin Koels in Ghent, who is chairing this with a patient, parent support group, a Turner support group, and then they've got a number of other patient representatives in there. And then there was, over here, done here, is the dissemination and access work package. And that's being led by Olaf Hiot in Lubeck with Alberto Pereira, as well as co-chairing this particular group. The idea very much is that these people will, of course, link up with ENDO-ERN because they're looking after ENDO-ERN, but they're also linking up with ESE and ESPE because it's very, very important. That's the group we want to have as our close stakeholders go. And there are representatives of ESE and ESPE sitting in this work package as well. Now, there are also a number of expert working groups over here. So this is calcium phosphate in growth. We've actually lumped it all together to ERN over here, who's working with Agnes Linglart on this. Then there is, in Budapest, endotumors, pituitary setting in Mel Dutani, London, thyroid, Ed Visser, adrenals, Nicole Reich in Munich, sex development in Stockholm with Anna Nordenstrom, glucose insulin with Znedek, Sumnik in Prague, and finally Sweet, sitting with Thomas Danner and Hanover. And these two are very, very closely linked to each other. Now, the idea very much is that these expert working groups are telling us what registries exist, what might be the priorities for registries in the future. They're also involved in advising us about the core clinical outcomes, which will go into the registry in the future. And they will also be acting as users of registry and trying to test the system out and so on. Okay. So in time, I expect that some of these will, you'll know already that in some of these conditions there are some established registries, and I showed you some data before. So for instance, there are already registries, for example, in adrenal tumors like NSAT, which sits over here. So we want to have these people in to learn from them as well as to what's the best way of doing things in the future. There's an independent advisory board over here. And given that we're Paris, I should mention Segalina, who's sort of in that advisory board, and there are other people as well from across the ocean, David Sandberg and Jesus Argenti from Madrid, given that we don't have anybody from Spain in here. And then there's Matt Johnson, who used to work for EuRRECa, and he's advising us on patients' behalf. So that's the project in a nutshell. When we applied for this project and when we got the feedback, because every ERN applied for this project and 5 out of the 20 whatever ERNs were successful in getting the funding, these were the kinds of feedback we got. And I've just underlined some of the points which were made by the reviewers. One was the fact that these are the strengths, really. So there weren't any weaknesses, actually. But anyway, the one strength was the fact that it was integrated across several key stakeholders. Okay. There was an involvement of European professional associations, and that provided for excellent geographical coverage. So SP and ESE were strong points for us. Then it was very much about comprehensive and wide-span fashion. Then it was about integration and linking of existing relevant registries in a transparent and accountable way, okay, is what we were looking at. And then another strong point was the partnership of high quality, and the strong link with the ERN and 2 professional societies was embedded in the partnership. Again, that was looked at as a positive thing. The only bad thing which came out of was at the bottom over here, which is we'd underestimated the budget for the work described. But, you know, we went for what we had. We couldn't ask for any more than what was what we could get. But yes, I agree that the project is ambitious. But then, of course, if you go for a project which is not very ambitious, then you'll be blamed for having a project which is not ambitious. So we have gone for something which I think is a start. Okay, I think 3 years probably will be a short period, given the fact what I showed you earlier on, that it may take a long, long time for these things. So we launched it in February 2018. There are a number of different activities going on. There's a newsletter for this. We've started the e-reporting of rare endocrine conditions. We've developed core data elements for the core endocrine registry, and please have a look at those. There's a core condition-specific clinical outcomes, which we're working on at the moment. We've got a draft recommendation by patients, parents, and the ethics group, and that's been done. We're taking part in a number of other activities like schools and things. Let me just share a couple of data sets with you from the EuRRECa side of things. So there are a number of different, if you go onto the EuRRECa website, EuRRECa.net, and if you go into registries, you will come across EuRRECa. And within the EuRRECa section, there's a lot of information over here, which is all in English at the moment, and we're in the process of converting this into different languages. But you can sign up for EuRRECa, and the reporting instructions are there as well. This is some results from the pilot, which we are doing at the moment. So this hasn't actually extended across the whole consortium at the moment, but we're just trying it out just to see how easy or difficult this bit is. So what we have over here are, in yellow over here, the non-registered ERN centers. So these are ERN centers which we haven't approached yet to get them registered, okay? And these are the centers which have registered, okay? And this is for July, and this is for August. Pediatric and adults. I've broken it down because there are some subtle differences between the reports we are getting. And this is just the same figure, but this time these sort of bars over here have been divided into two. So these are the gray ones are the ones who at the moment are inactive, and these are the blue ones over here, the active registered centers. So you will see that there are a group of them within the ones who are registered who are not at the moment alive and kicking, but in time they will do that. Okay. The number of people who are reporting in this pilot at the moment are sort of 34 the pediatrics and 51 in the adult centers. But you'll also see this interesting fact that the number of clinicians, or I think clinicians, but in some places it may be administrators who are working with the clinicians, who are reporting per center varies from 1 to 7. Adults is 1 to 14. So in one center, there are 14 people reporting lots of different conditions. For us, that's a lot of work, actually. Okay, but if that's easier for the center, that's fine. In our own center in Glasgow, we have one administrator who reports on everything. Okay, we send him the data, and he does it all for us. But that might be a bit of a luxury for our center. And now, if you look at the data which are being reported, and I think this is going to be the strength of this thing for rare conditions, is the fact that, and at the moment, there are only the small number of centers who are, it's just these blue centers over here which are reporting. And these are the numbers of their reporting as far as conditions go. So this is in July and this is in August. If you just take the pituitary for a moment, this is the pituitary mark over here. So in July, there were 40 conditions within the pituitary MTG. I haven't broken it down as to what those conditions were. And then, of course, if this was the case for these centers, then if you multiply that by the number of centers who will come online in the future, this is going to be a big data set which could be used for studies, for studying core outcomes, whatever we want to think about in the future. And again, the other point is the fact that from month to month, these things do vary. So there will be, this will all even out over time. So we're trying to make our presence felt as much as possible at ESPI and at the ECE meeting in Barcelona. Please go to the website. You can also tweet on EuRRECa over here. Most importantly, I would advise everybody to go and subscribe to the EuRRECa news and updates. We can't email you directly, so you have to actually subscribe to that. So if you go in and subscribe to it, then you'll be kept up to date with newsletters and things which will be coming out. So in summary, I think exciting times for European endocrinology. I have no doubt about this. I think we are going somewhere. We're one of the small number of ERNs which are doing it. And given the fact that we've got the support of ESPI and ESC, this is a project which will be much bigger than just ENDO-ERN. And maybe even further than Europe, but certainly at the moment it is, our focus is ENDO-ERN, then it's going to be ESPI, ESC, and take it further. In fact, one of the people who are participating in that EuRRECa project are not in the ERN, they're another center within Europe. I think ENDO-ERN, however, is a great example of how clinical centers across Europe can work together at improving patient care. And what I think we need to be doing is thinking about effective but simple registries, which will be the cornerstone of these networks. EuRRECa builds on ENDO-ERN and aims to extend its reach further across all centers within and beyond ENDO-ERN. And finally, I think the purpose of EuRRECa will very much be to provide that evidence that networks for rare conditions, and I'm talking endocrine conditions, can provide the infrastructure that can be used to improve clinical care and research. Our project, EuRRECa, is also quite unique amongst the 5 projects which are being funded by the ERN, which is actually looking for a core registry for all the endocrine conditions, whereas the other projects are looking for a detailed disease registry for some conditions within their respective ERNs. Okay? So we're trying to please everybody, but we'll please everybody to a small amount. That's the way we're looking at it. Okay, thank you.